Module 6, the Classical Era. The Classical Era is generally understood to be the time period when the classic works of the standard repertory were composed. The period includes the works of composers such as Haydn, Beethoven, and Mozart. Although the Classical Era was relatively short-lived, from 1750 to 1830, the music of these three composers showed a number of changes from the Baroque period. The terminology is also somewhat confusing, as we often refer to music from the 16th through 19th centuries as classical music. Many of the composers and musicians of this time were interested in the ancient civilizations and the art that they produced, including music. Characteristics of the classical period. The music of this time period was also influenced by society and culture, as well as ancient civilizations. In addition, the classical period of music overlaps what is known as the Age of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason. Characteristics of music from the classical period. The Viennese school, sometimes called the First Viennese school. When referring to this, scholars are not actually referring to a brick-and-mortar school, but to the music that came out of the city of Vienna, Austria during this time period. When scholars refer to the Viennese school, they are referring to, then, these major composers and the explosion of creativity and innovation in music that developed: Haydn, Beethoven, and Mozart. The Baroque period, often characterized by very elaborate music where composers used a high degree of ornamentation and polyphony, but in the Classical period, composers sought to return to more down-to-earth music and strove to create beauty in the music through simplicity and balance. Emphasis of the Classical period. During the Classical period, instrumental music increased in popularity. Although vocal pieces were still composed, many of the famous works of this period are instrumental. The use of more instrumental music created a period of music that showcases big, grand pieces of music. Larger ensembles and orchestras often perform these pieces. The Classical period was really the first time period to include full sections of woodwind, brass, and string instruments in the orchestra, resulting in an often full and dramatic sound. Forms of music. Sonata form. Don't confuse sonata form with a sonata. A sonata is a large-scale composition that is played rather than sung, and sonata form is a piece of music that has three parts in an ABA pattern. The three parts of the sonata are the exposition. This is the first part of sonata form, and it is where the composer will bring in or expose all of the musical ideas that will be used in the piece. The first tune and key of the piece are used. The development. This is the second part of sonata form, and it is where the composer builds on the two themes from the exposition. Music scholars have sometimes described this as a fantasia because the composer can run wild with the theme set up and create an infinite number of different variations. The recapitulation. The third part of sonata form, and it is where the exposition is repeated, although it may be changed slightly. In many cases, the piece will end with the recapitulation part of the sonata form, but there are some pieces that continue on in what is known as a coda. The symphony. In the Baroque period and the beginning of the Classical period, symphonies were associated with vocal music such as operas. However, as the Classical period progressed, the term symphony began to solidify as the term for a longer musical composition and scored for an orchestra. It had a four-movement structure: the allegro, or opening sonata. This movement is often brisk and upbeat. A slow movement. A minuet or scherzo. A minuet is a type of social dance in 3/4 time. A scherzo is a fast-paced composition that sometimes replaces the minuet in longer compositions. And finally, an allegro, sonata, or rondo. Some classical composers include Joseph Haydn. His music impact on the period is reflected in the titles Father of Symphony and the Father of the String Quartet. In 1761, he was offered a position with the Esterhazy family, one of the richest and most important families in Austria. One of the aspects is that Haydn's work is known for the musical humor that often permeated his work. He was born in 1732 in Austria, and his notable works include the Surprise Symphony, and he composed over 100 full symphonies during his lifetime. He died in 1809. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart began composing pieces by the age of 5. He is primarily responsible for the development of the piano concerto during the classical period. One of the characteristics of Mozart's work that has helped his music retain its popularity is the memorable melodies that many of Mozart's pieces have. He was born in 1756 in Austria. He composed over 600 different pieces, including over 40 symphonies, as well as violin sonatas, piano concertos, masses, and arias. One of his most famous pieces is Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Ludwig van Beethoven. His talent was visible at an early age, and at the age of 17 he moved to Vienna, hoping to study with Mozart, although it's not clear whether the two ever met. He studied with Haydn for a time and quickly became known as a piano virtuoso or master. Like Haydn and Mozart, he composed in a range of different musical forms and added innovation and new sounds to each form that he worked in. One of the tragic aspects of Beethoven's life is that he began to lose his hearing by about the age of 26. He was born in 1770 in Germany. Some of his notable works include the Moonlight Sonata and Für Elise, and he died in 1827.